Alongside Jesse Simonton, I'm Austin Price for a little Instant Reacts podcast after Tennessee's 24-20 win over Missouri. Jesse, Tennessee Bowl eligible for the first time in a few years, and dating back to that 2016 season when they played in the Music City Bowl and beat Nebraska. In Jeremy Pruitt's second year after a 1-4 start, kind of a come to Jesus meeting following the uninspired loss in Gainesville has resulted in Tennessee now having won 5 of their last 6, and they're sitting there at 6-5 with 1 game left. And if they win next week, likely will probably be headed to sunny Florida.
Last time we were here, it was cold. It was miserable. We're sitting outside. Butch got all mad because I asked him about, did he think he was going to have a job in the morning? He ultimately did not. This year, Tennessee, we talked about it briefly in the 2-minute, but they did a whole lot of things wrong in this game, and yet they found a way to win. And Jeremy Pruitt was probably about as happy as we've seen him at any point of this season, wouldn't you say? I mean, he was grinning. He was smiling. He even enjoyed, a lot of times, even after some of these wins during this recent streak, he's jogged off the field. Sometimes he barely even gives Casey, like a big hug or anything. But today, tonight he was feeling it. This was something special. And, the fact that Jarrett Guarantano, Tennessee went back to this guy, the much maligned quarterback, and he turns around a performance where he even left some yards on the field, and yet he threw for over 400 yards. Tennessee ends up with 3 100-yard receivers for the first time in school history. Those guys, we said at the beginning of the season, if Tennessee was going to be successful offensively, it would go on the backs of Jawan Jennings, Josh Palmer, and Marquez Callaway, and all 3 of those guys just made a couple stupendous catches. All 3 of them took big shots. Whether it was Josh Palmer with the one-handed play where he gets drilled on the ground, Callaway, the one snap that Maurer comes in, almost gets just completely decapitated. And Jawan got drilled at the goal line on a run, tweaked an ankle on another, and yet they all kept coming back, kept fighting. Palmer with a big third down catch, and then Jawan with the catch that won him the game.
Yeah, just an impressive outing. And to me, I go back. Obviously everybody's going to talk about the 415 yards for JG, the 3 100-yard receivers for the first time in school history. But honestly, I thought in the second half, Tennessee was able to run the ball enough and be effective enough on the ground to, really just give JG and the rest of the offense an option where they didn't feel like they had to throw it every play. You go back in the first half, Ty Chandler's averaging 1.7 yards per carry. He ends the game over 4 yards a carry. And Tim Jordan averaging 4 yards a carry. He ends the game over 5 yards a carry at 5.3. It's just an impressive job up front by the offensive line, who early did not have clean pockets, but later in the game, was much more effective. And then being able to run the football against a Missouri defense that had not been able to run or had not given up many yards on the ground all year, I thought was a nice little piece to this winning equation for Tennessee on Saturday night.
Yeah, Crouch gets his first career touchdown in a little 1-yard plunge. That was the play that everyone wanted to have happened at Bama and didn't. They called it tonight. One of the things, and I jotted this down to my notes just watching the game. And I'll have this, later tomorrow night once we fly back to Knoxville and get the review piece in. But, I thought Jim Chaney kind of busted out some of those old Georgia, Arkansas toss sweeps, whether it was the extra offensive lineman with Calvert moving over, or even just having Pope and another tight end on the outside with getting Trey Smith or Jerome Carvin out on the edge. Those seem to really spring some of these longer 7, 8, 9, 10-yard runs that kind of open things up for Guarantano and the receivers. But that is the storyline for Tennessee's offense. They got 500-some-odd yards against the number 10 overall defense in the country. Yes, Missouri has been the beneficiary of playing some teams that aren't great offensively. But, Tennessee took what Florida did a week ago. They said, hey, this is Missouri.
We have better receivers.
Yeah, we have better receivers, so we don't have to throw it to the running backs and tight ends. We can throw it
down the field vertically.
Yeah, and they had, I think, 9 plays I lost count by the time we went to the field and watched the last 5 minutes. But at one point in the fourth quarter, Tennessee had 9 completions over 20 yards. Again, all 3 of those guys just made fantastic catches. And JG, I mean, he can't throw a swing pass to save his life, but whether it was 3rd and 15, 3rd and 20. And then at the end of the game, I mean, he made 2. He threw a seed, just a complete seed, to Josh Palmer over the middle. And then for them to come back on that last play, Jawan Jennings basically demanded the ball on the sidelines. They call it an out route, a simple, kind of a simple route for him. But JG had to complete the pass, and he did, and that was the game. And think about how much they did wrong in this game, AP, in all the past seasons that would have lost. That 2 field goals get blocked. Just strange kind of in-game management. We can talk about particularly at the end of the first half with kind of the timeout usage. Tim Jordan fumbles when it looks like, you're sitting there, you look at me in the press box and you're like, man, if Tennessee punches it in here, the Tiger fans are going home. They're one that made it to begin with, but they're going home. It's cold. They're going to be down by 2 touchdowns.
For the second consecutive game, Tennessee had a fourth quarter fumble that changed the momentum at the time.
Yeah.
And somehow they found a way again, just like at Kentucky, after the Ty Chandler fumble, they found a night after Tim Jordan fumble.
Yeah, and then the irony is they stopped them for a field goal here, and then Ty takes a knee on the kickoff return because he misunderstands the fair catch rule. So Tennessee has to actually start inside their own 8-yard line. And that was just kind of a calamity of errors there. But again, they responded. The defense kind of bowed up. They got a big stop there. They also got a stop when Missouri had a chance to take the lead, and then the offense was able to put it through. I mean, again, the players I think were about as happy as we've ever seen them. Chris Rumpf after the game, coaches doing the mime bowling thing towards the fans. You had Kavaris Crouch and Trey Smith and Wanya Morris up in the stands. Marquez Callaway was signing autographs. I mean, it was a jubilant bunch, that's for sure.
Well, and they should have been. I mean, at some point, we talked about this in the 2-minute drill. This was a group of seniors that didn't know how to win. I mean, early in the year, I mean, they were 1-4, and they could have been 4-1, 1-4. I mean, there was no difference in Marquez Callaway. I mean, it didn't seem like it affected him. And tonight, I mean, he's one of the guys that's showing the most emotion, with the fans, and and a big smile on his face. I mean, these guys that have kind of been through, the hellish times the last few years have, found a way. They, that I don't. It's easy to say they've had, the meeting after the Gainesville game and all that. I just think they bought in, man. I mean, I think that, they talked a little bit about the fact that the tenor of the meeting was, if you're going to stay with us, and Nigel talked about this, if you're going to be here, then be all in, and they've been all in, and that's why, I'm not going to say that some of the guys that left mid-season were cancers. I do not think that's the case, but I do think that when you lose 2 or 3 guys, and you look around the room and go, all right, those guys weren't all in. Is anybody else going to leave? All right, we're all in, and they just kind of took off, and they found a way to grind out that Mississippi State game. And after that, and the way they competed at Alabama, I think they had self-belief. When they played South Carolina, there was self-belief. Well, and from here on out, they've had self-belief.
Yeah, and both Daniel Batuli and Trey Smith kind of spoke to that after the game tonight. Trey Smith said the turning point of the season was Mississippi State. Batuli said when they gained that confidence was Mississippi State. This is probably a discussion for Tuesday's pod, but, I do think that the fact that Jeremy has instilled this group, full of scars, battered and bruised, with legitimate confidence and belief that, hey, I can win with y'all. I think that really did mean something for these guys that had been, particularly maligned for the last 2-3 years. So, I mean, crazy game. We both picked Tennessee to win, so I can't say I'm surprised at the result. I mean, Tennessee got some good fortune at the beginning of the game. Alberto doesn't play. Johnson's out. Acey's out. So obviously Missouri was a bit shorthanded. But Tennessee took advantage, and they made their fair share of mistakes. But suddenly they're staring at the fact that they started 1-4 and have a real shot at going 7-5.
No doubt about it. I mean,
for all the folks saying Texas is back, Tennessee and Texas, I think, have close to around the same record now. I think they're both 6-5.
Yes, I mean, and I don't know who the reporter was. He was from, he covered Missouri, but he was tasked with coming to the opposing locker room, and he asked Jeremy, when you look around college football and you see Willie Taggart and Chip Kelly and Scott Frost and the struggles they've had, what's it say about the success that your program's had? I thought that was a great question. Because you have talked about, the start of the early signing period when Jeremy Pruitt and all those same core group of coaches, and you go back to that, December of 2017. I think they, put piecemeal classes together, and it hurt some of those programs. A lot of these guys are not having success, and he wasn't early in the year, but he is now.
He is now. Couple individuals, obviously, that bear mentioning, I think, both good and bad. We talked about the receivers. Obviously, they were fantastic. JG, rough night for Brent Samaglia. It was the mush rush on the first one where Calvert and Carvin really didn't seal the interior, so that one got blocked. The second one, Pruitt kind of laid it on the feet of the kicker. The snap wasn't great, but the kick was way low. Not great there. Tennessee special teams did not have a particularly good night. Defensively, though, on the flip side, the continued, I had the story on it before the game, AP, just kind of, Nigel Warrior's renaissance and how it's kind of happened, and the idea that, for him it's been a lot about that he's just kind of found this renewed passion for the game. But he's just playing so much more disciplined. He's just making plays in the right spot. His tackle, it's a play that gets lost in the box score, AP. His tackle on Missouri's opening drive where he stops the guy short by 1.5 yards on 3rd and 7, so they have to kick a field goal instead of, first and goal from the 12. I mean, that's a play that just goes down on the box score as a tackle. But that, you look at the game, ends up being a one-score game. He's just making plays like that on a routine basis, on a week-to-week basis that it's funny to say this. Tennessee's going to miss Nigel Warrior next year. They're going to miss.
They are.
Nigel
I mean,
Warrior
the light has come on for certain guys on this team, and I don't know if that's just them being more mature. I don't know if that's development. I like to think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I do think, and Jeremy's told me multiple times in the conversations we've had, a lot of it is getting guys to kind of be more mature. I mean, we're having to play a lot of guys as freshmen or sophomore. I mean, Alontae Taylor wasn't ready to play last year. I'm not sure he was ready to play this year. I mean, the kid never really played corner in high school, but he was thrust into it because he's so athletic. Maybe next year is going to be the boom year for him because he looks like $1 million. I mean, who's to say that he can't, take that huge step in a progression? I mean, sometimes it just takes a while. I mean, everybody has this high hopes for J.J. Peterson, and we'll see if it ever, comes to fruition. But, go back a couple years ago. Jonathan Tongbo come in with unbelievable expectations, the weight of the world on him, the ice cream cone, Bob Shoot, and all that stuff. And, by his last year, he was really starting to come on as a player and really starting to develop, and then got hurt at Auburn.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the lights come on for some of these guys, Nigel being one of them, and you're exactly right. They'll miss him more than, a lot of people would have ever thought 8 weeks ago.
Yep. And, I mean, my closing thoughts here, some other guys that I thought just quietly, I'll be curious on the rewatch, but Aubrey Solomon goes out fairly early, and Matthew Butler comes in and breaks up, has a pass deflection. Karat Garland with a swim move, tackle for loss. They got kind of some contributions from down the line on the defensive line. And then offensively, Calvert gets yanked for the penalty. That was not a hold. I thought Jeremy probably overreacted a little bit there. Darnell was clearly not particularly effective with that right ankle. So what do? They put Calvert back in the game, and Tennessee's offensive line, pass protected, I thought much better. Basically, that final drive of the first half all the way and through much of the second half, and that was with the same 5 guys that played the majority of snaps together against Kentucky. And tonight, I didn't notice. I'm not even sure Jameer Johnson played.
I don't think he did.
Yeah,
it's turf field here, so you don't know totally sure. But when he walked off the field, he looked clean. He didn't look like he had been any scuffed up or.
He was standing by the heater most of the time when I saw him, which is where I would have been too if I wasn't out there. So, yeah, I mean that's kind of my closing thought. Tennessee 6-5. Who would have who'd have thunk it after an 0-2 start? This staff, these players, they deserve much of the acclaim and praise that's going to come their way. I thought it was fun. I did think it was funny that Trey Smith, he says, no one picks us, no one believes in us. I think there's a lot of people that are kind of starting to get on this Tennessee bandwagon a little bit. A lot of folks picked them to beat Kentucky. We obviously all did at VolQuest. We
all 4 picked them to win tonight.
Picked them to win tonight.
That's really irrelevant. At the end of the day, if they think that nobody's picking them and that's driving them, how many high school coaches I know that have went and hung a banner and said with bad words on it and put it on the stadium and it was like, oh, the kids from X school that were playing Friday night, look what they did, and it fired them up. And it was really the coaches at the high school that did that. They're doing it as motivation. So whatever works.
That's what Wes did.
No, that's not what Wes did. But maybe Rob did do that.
Maybe Rob Lewis did.
No, all jokes aside. My point is that whatever works. I mean, if it's going, it's going, and just keep it going. And for Tennessee, they have now won 5 of 6. They're 6-5. They'll return home next week. A 4:00 kickoff on Senior Day, and you can bet the bottom dollar. I know Tennessee
fans.
To
hang a 50 burger.
Well, yes, but the Tennessee fans. They embraced teams. They embraced the basketball team a couple years ago that was picked 13th in the league and ended up co-sharing the regular season title.
For this group?
They will be there at 4:00 next Saturday. It will be whatever tickets are left. They will get gobbled up, like the turkey, the 50 burger, whatever you said. In the next coming days, and they'll be there loud. They'll be there loud not only for Daniel Batuli, not only for Nigel Warrior, but they're all going to come from number 15 because the kid is,
they're going to miss him.
They're going to miss him. I mean, what did he end up with tonight, Jesse? Looking at the final total, he goes for 115. That now puts him basically, if he can do that again, if he can do that number again, he'll get to 1,000 yards. And
he has 2 games to do it.
Well, correct, but I'm saying in the regular season. I think that would be more impressive if he gets it in the regular season. We get to 1,000 yards. He's almost to 10 touchdowns. He's got 8, and that counts 1 rushing, and he almost had a rushing one tonight, but that kid lowered the boom. It was one of the few times Juwan actually took a big pop in his career. But Tennessee wins it. They're bowl eligible, and speaking for all 4 of us at VolQuest, we want to win next week based off the fact that helps the chances to go to Florida because we don't really want to spend the holidays in a cold weather city. We would much prefer Jacksonville. I would like a tee time at TPC Sawgrass, and it makes it easier to cover the Under Armour All-American game in Orlando, Florida. For Jesse Simonton, I'm Austin Price from Columbia, Missouri, signing off on this Instant React podcast on a winning night, Tennessee 24, Missouri 20.